If you've clicked on this video, you want to know what a session 0 is. By the end of the video, I'm going to show you what a session 0 is, I'm going to show you why they're important, and I'm going to show you how to run your own. Put quite simply, session 0s are a session that you hold before you actually sit down to play. It helps you put your best foot forward. By priming your games, you'll find that everything that you are ready to hold at the table sticks a lot better. Now, it might seem that the session 0 is serious business. However, it doesn't have to be. The session 0 is actually a lot of fun, and I highly recommend taking the time to use it as a way of bringing the group together by socializing, building characters, and getting excited for what's to come with your new game. Now, session 0 is one of my favorite sessions to hold, whether it is players that have been at my table for a very long time or players that are brand new. They are really great to set the foundations for the stories that you're going to tell through the gaming that you're going to do. Within session 0, you're going to go over rules, expectations, scheduling, brand new characters, what setting you're going to play in, whether to bring snacks or not. Are you going to be using dice? Are you going to be using cards? What happens if a player is missing? You're going to go over pretty much anything that you can think of that you need for a session 0. Anything that you think would benefit the game before sitting down and playing should be covered. So the time has come. Everyone's agreed to the game system they want to play and the story they want to tell. So the next step, and it might seem obvious, is to establish communications. And establishing communications is quite simple. All you need to do is get everyone inside the same group chat. From there, you need to schedule a session 0. If people aren't sure what a session 0 is, you can always send them here to check out this video, or you can just let them know that session 0 is a setup session before any gaming happens at the table. Next up, meet up. On the scheduled day of the session 0, it's very important to get comfortable. If you haven't met each other before, take the time to introduce yourself. Also, don't be afraid to take some time here to socialize. Talking about your favorite movies, your favorite stories, your favorite tabletop role-playing games, anything that might help the group get to know each other better. Once you're done, briefly touch on the agenda for the rest of the session 0 and move on. Next, table setup. Table setup isn't about setting up the game, the campaign, the characters, or anything like that. Table setup is all about what functions at the table and how to facilitate play for the people at that table. First up in table setup is talking about GM and player styles. It's very important to understand what people like at the table and what they do at the table. If you guys have been playing together for a long time already, you might have an understanding of what styles everyone has at the table, but it's still good to rehash them and really understand how everyone works. Some people prefer descriptions, other people prefer not to be as descriptive. Some people enjoy more combat, other people enjoy roleplay. It's really good to understand those dynamics before sitting down and spending hours upon hours of gaming and storytelling together. Take a moment to understand those styles, perhaps writing them down and building small profiles of what's important for people for when they come to the table, so the GM understands and the other players understand what we need to be hitting in ways of expectations. Now you've talked about the type of GM and players are at the table. The next important thing to talk about is rules and expectations. Rules and expectations are probably the most important thing to discuss in session 0, as if anyone walks away from the table with a broken expectation, or if a rule has been broken, that's when you're going to start to see people being upset and frustrated. Take the time here to really elaborate what those expectations and rules are. Some examples of rules that you might set at the table is whether or not you allow PvP. Is it allowed? How is it handled if it is? What about if another player wants to steal from another player? How do you handle that situation? Or if a player wants to roll against another player? Another table rule that you might have for gameplay is whether or not you have a play forward clause. Any mistakes that have been made at the table are fixed in future sessions. We spoke about that in a previous video. Another thing that you might want to consider is rules that are away from the table in gameplay. What happens if a player is late to a game very often, or find themselves distracted? Or, zooming back to the table, do we allow digital devices at the table like iPads and iPhones? How is snacks handled? Is it always the same person that brings the snacks, or do you take turns? By discussing these things now, you set yourself up for success and safeguard your table from future problems. Expectations. Some examples of table setup expectations would be stuff like scheduling. How often do you plan to play? Session duration. How long is the session going to go for? Do you have a break in that session? What happens at the end of the session? Another expectation might be, is the GM keeping track of the character sheets, or are the players keeping track of the character sheets? What happens if a player can't show up? Is it the GM that controls the character, or do they go to the back where people can't see them? Setting these things up before they happen will have everyone on the same page so that you can get to gaming and not have to worry about things going awry. The very last thing that I would recommend for table setup would be to create some form of file share. It's very important that you have a communal place where you can share anything that's relevant to your game. Stuff like pictures, character sheets, notes, having it at that one-stop place helps it be able to be found by anyone that needs it at your table. And setting up that file share could be as simple as creating a Google Drive, or even using the group chat that you're already intending to use for your communication as well. Anything that works for you and facilitates that sharing of files will help your game tremendously. The table all set up, it's now time to jump into the funnest part of a session 0, and that is game setup. Game setup is all about setting up the game you intend to play, talking about which system you want to use, what setting you want to play in, and the characters you want to create for that game. The first thing in game setup I would recommend would be to have a conversation of the game that is intended to be played and the story that is intended to be told. It's very important to find a balance between everyone at the table so that they can find satisfaction from the game and the story that is there. And the reason for that is to design a game that suits everyone at the table, designing it together so that everyone finds something that they enjoy at the table. A player that enjoys combat and action might not feel like they're getting much out of a game that has very little of that, in a game that might be all social intrigue and roleplay. Finding equal ground amongst each other will help the game survive and thrive. It's here that I'll say one of the tools that we've designed and supplied in the link below is a form that helps gather that information from the table and puts it into a graphic that you can see the breakdown of what people enjoy at the table. On top of that, it has parts inside of that form that gather previous expectations and rules and considerations that you might want for your table. If you don't enjoy our tool, I would suggest creating your own, as it does help understand the table and the game that you intend to play. Remember that the point of a session 0 is to set yourself up to survive and thrive, to be successful at the table and to get the best sessions for you and everyone else at the table. It's at this point when looking at the system and setting that you might want to consider how to get the most out of it. In a previous video, we did discuss creating tools and player aids and handouts that might help you facilitate play and flow at the table. If you have designed something, hand them out now, but if you haven't, it might be a good idea to note down what you might need for future play and have it ready before session 1. Now that you've had a discussion on system and setting, it's time to jump into character creation. Character creation is one of the funnest parts of Session 0, as well as one of the most important parts. And the reason for that is everything that has been previously set up has been leading to this point. The characters that you are going to create represent everything that you want for the game and the story that you want to tell. With the previous discussion of the system and setting, you should have an understanding of what you want to highlight and utilize from that system and setting, and all the other rules and expectations that you have set up should help structure the character design that you're intending to use for your game. Have a discussion about all of that and then jump into creating your characters. Once you have your mechanical character sheets, you can start talking about the connections that you have to each other and the setting that you're going to play in. Remember to have fun with this and get excited for the story and the game that you want to tell together with the sheets that you're creating. If you don't want your characters directly connected, take the moment to consider the 6 degrees of separation. Maybe your character knows up to 6 different NPCs that eventually connect to the other characters. Take that moment to understand how you want to explore that and work that into your backstory. On top of that, talk about backstory. It's really important to understand how your character is going to work in the game that you've designed and the story that you guys have come up with. After character creation, you should be ready to finish up. Take everything that you have discussed and agreed upon and put it in one document and put it on that file share. That way everyone has access to the agreement and can see what has been discussed and agreed upon. If you do find that there's something that doesn't suit the game as you play, find an amendment that everyone can agree upon and update that document. Anything else that's left to be done before session can be put into a checklist for the individual that might need things to be done before session 1. Stuff like generating backstory or the GM needing to create stuff for the game, put that into a list so that they can tick that off before session 1. With that all said, quick thank you to our sponsor, Wooten Forge. Wooten Forge is an amazing gaming company here in Australia that take down under timber and turn it into amazing heirloom quality gaming accessories for your tabletop needs. You should check them out by using the link below and the promo code LETUSBEGIN to get 10% off your total order. If you'd like to watch another video that helps you and your tabletop group, check out this video right here. But other than that, thank you so much, go with love and luck, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye. And set up for the game. You should probably establish. You should probably establish. What happens if dice at the table are lost? That is not something that is a problem because you give back that dice.
I'm a wizard. Look at my wizardly powers. Oh, I'm such a...
Jeez.